In this lesson, you're going to continue to expand on our knowledge of acknowledgements by wiring up our form and our send location button to be a little more helpful for the user. So for example, if I type a message in and I click send, the message is indeed sent, but the form's not cleared and I'm not refocused on the input. The same thing is true with send location. Depending on how recently it's been fetched, it can take up to 2 seconds for the location to be fetched, and the user interface doesn't let the user know that anything's actually happening. So what we're going to do is mess around with the input from our code, and we're also going to enable and disable our buttons so a user can't send the location again until the previous send location action has finished. So let's go ahead and knock all of that out by making some changes in Visual Studio Code. Now, the first thing we're going to do is enable and disable that form during the process where the message is being sent. So right here, this is when we want to disable the form. And then down below, in the acknowledgement, this is where we are going to re-enable it. So there's no reason to send a message until the previous one has been sent. That's also going to prevent accidental double clicks where someone sends the same message twice, and we'll end up doing a similar thing with send location a little bit later. Now we're going to end up selecting these same elements over and over again, so instead of typing out the same code over and over again, up above we'll create variables for the elements that we're going to be working with. So right here, I'm just going to create a little comment for this section called elements, and we're going to create maybe 3 different constants. One for the form, one for the input, and one for the button, so we can manipulate all of them in the code down below. So right here, what I'm going to do is prefix all of these with the $sign. So the first one will be $message form. Now, the only reason I'm doing this is as a convention, letting me know that what I have in this variable is an element from the DOM that I've selected. You don't have to do this, it is merely a convention to make your code a bit easier to parse, and then over here, we'll select it. So just like we have down below, we're going to use document.querySelector, and we'll grab it by its ID. That is message-form. Now, instead of needing to type this out down below, I can just reference the variable. So I'll remove what I already have up above and just reference message form, adding add event listener right on to it. Next up, we're going to also set up elements for the input and the button right here, const. That's going to be message form input equals, and we'll actually start with message form. And on there, I'll use query selector to find something inside of the form, and in this case, an input is what I'm looking for. Next, I can do the exact same thing for the button, so const message form button equals, right here, I will select from message form the following, .query selector, grabbing the button. Perfect. And now that we have this in place, we have everything we need to start manipulating our button, our form, and our input right down below. Now, the first thing we're going to do is disable that submit button. That's going to disable the entire form. You won't be able to submit it by clicking enter, and you won't be able to submit it by clicking the button. So right here, that is message of form button, and we're going to do just a little bit of DOM manipulation. So .setAttribute allows us to set attributes on our HTML elements. And right here, what are we going to do? We're going to set disabled to disable it, and the value is the same as the actual attribute name. So disabled for the value as well. So this line of code just disables the form once it's been submitted. Now we're not re-enabling it at all, so let's see what this looks like in the browser. I'll give my browser a refresh. Right here, I'll type a message in, I'll click send, and we can see that the button has been disabled. I can't click it again. And if I try to hit enter over here, nothing's happening either. The message is not getting sent more than just once. Now that we've successfully disabled the button, we do want to make sure that we eventually re-enable it, and we're going to re-enable it in our acknowledgement callback down below. Now I want to re-enable it regardless of whether or not we got an error, so I'll add that right here. That is message form button, and we are going to use remove attribute to remove an attribute. We remove it by its name, and the name is disabled. Perfect. Now if we go ahead and rerun things once again, I can type a message in. I can go ahead and click send. It's disabled for just a moment, then it's re-enabled so I can send off more messages. Next up, I want to make sure to clear that input after the message has been sent. So right here, we'll add a little bit of code to get that done as well. What we're going to do is start with message form input. And here we're going to set value to set the value for the input, and I'm going to set it equal to an empty string to clear it. We can also move the focus back to the input by using the focus method available on message form input. So right here, let's reference it just one more time, and we'll call focus to move the cursor inside of there. Now that's going to give us a pretty good setup where we enable the button after the event has been acknowledged. I'm going to go ahead and remove those comments and we'll test things out. So right here, I'm going to save chat.js. Once again, I'll be refreshing the browser and I'll go ahead and type something in my message. I'll click enter and I can see that I do have an error, message from input. I have a small typo there. So let's go ahead and just fix that. Over here, I can see I typed from instead of form. I can save the program and I can run things again. Now we'll try another message, hit enter, and we can see everything works as expected. The input was cleared and my focus is right here. Now if I type a message in and move my focus away from the input and click send, the focus is brought back, which is great. This allows me to type messages really quickly. So 1, 2, 3, back to back like you would expect. Now with this in place for the form, you're going to do something similar for send location. We want to disable that button while we're fetching the location and sending it to the server. We'll re-enable it once the event has been acknowledged. Down below, I have some challenge comments outlining what I'd like you to do. So let's quickly go over them and then I'll set you loose. So right here, you're going to disable the send location button while the location is being sent. Step 1, you want to set up a selector at the top of the file, just like we did for the other 3 elements we've been working with. Then you're going to disable that send location button just before the current position is fetched. So right here, after we know that we're actually going to fetch it because they have geolocation, but just before we actually start that fetching process. Then from there, you'll re-enable the button after the acknowledgement callback fires. So once we've confirmed the event has been sent, we'll re-enable it, allowing them to send their location again. Then you're going to go ahead and test your work. So in the end of the day, the button should function very similarly to what it's doing now, but during that process where the location is being sent, the button should be disabled. All right, knock that out, and when you're done, come back and click play. All right, how'd that go? Let's kick things off with step number 1. We're going to stay organized by selecting our elements. Now, right here, we are using send location, the button, and we'll end up using it a bunch more. So what I'm going to do is copy this to the clipboard and bring it up top. Up here, we'll create a new element, and you could have called it whatever you wanted to, but $send location button seems like a pretty good name. And right here, we'll paste in the exact selector we had before. Now that's it for step 1. Down below, what I'm going to do is just refactor this right here. It's no longer necessary. We can just reference our variable instead. And we're still using add event listener correctly. So next up, we want to disable the button just before getting the current position. So that's right here. There's no need to disable it before we check if we're even going to be able to fetch the location. So right here, we will once again reference send location button. That's why I wanted to break it out into its own variable. And then we will go ahead and use set attribute to disable it. Setting disabled equal to disabled. Now from there, we want to make sure that we do re-enable it in the future but let's go ahead and test things out as they are so far. I'll refresh the browser. I'll click send location. It is indeed disabled. I cannot click it again. All we're going to do now is make sure that it gets re-enabled after the location was fetched. So right here, let's get that done. Down below in our acknowledgement, either before or after our console.log, we're going to enable the button once again. So that is send location button. This time using remove attribute and removing disabled. Excellent. Now the last thing left to do is to test our work. So I'm going to remove these challenge comments and make sure everything is functional from inside of the browser. I'll save all of my files, refresh the browser, and attempt to send the location. Right here, I'll send the location and I can see the button is now disabled while it's fetching that location. And once the location prints, the button is re-enabled, allowing me to click it again and send the location again. Now that we have this in place, we just have a slightly nicer user interface for our users, giving them clearer feedback as to what's happening. With this in place, we're going to continue on to the next lesson and focus on getting our messages rendered to the user interface as opposed to just showing up in the console down below. I'm excited to get to that, so let's jump right in to the next one.